Welcome back to the deep dive. Go ahead and put away your spreadsheets for a bit, maybe minimize the news feeds and just lean in a little closer. This is not our usual session. We're not focused on, geopolitical shifts or the newest breakthroughs in quantum computing today.
Not at all.
Today, the sources we have stacked up,
Yeah.
they're intensely personal, intensely philosophical. They're asking us to take what might be the most challenging leap of all.
Which is to turn the lens inward.
Exactly, to consider the fundamental architecture of our own reality.
It really does require a profound shift in perspective. I mean, we're being asked to move away from the objective world, the facts and figures we usually analyze, and instead focus on the deeply subjective internal experience of living inside that world. The core material we're looking at is, well, it's what amounts to a philosophical confession. A highly insightful and, frankly, pretty unsettling one from someone who feels they've detected a flaw in the matrix of their everyday life.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The mission today, it sounds simple, but it's really not. We are exploring the idea that daily life might be running on a visible script.
Right. They're not just as a metaphor.
No, not a metaphor. The actual sensation that reality itself is a performance, or even a simulation with what the source material daringly calls visible cables. And our goal here is to move past the immediate, the reflexive skepticism, that kind of knee-jerk dismissal we usually give to these kinds of ideas.
Sure, the conspiracy theory label.
Right. And instead to truly explore what it means to feel like you are waking up from a trance.
Exactly. We're using these writings as a kind of shortcut. The point isn't to prove that reality is a simulation, but to arrive at a really powerful aha moment.
What's that moment?
That moment is recognizing the structure of the life you are already living. The pre-programmed dialogues and paths that you follow them habitually.
I have to admit, reading the source material, I felt profoundly exposed.
I can see that.
It starts right off the bat with this core feeling that I think so many people wrestle with. Performing a life that looks completely real on the surface. Successful even.
That feels hollow.
Deeply hollow underneath. The author talks about building careers as these elaborate facades, keeping essential relationships on hold until the performance is over.
Waiting for the real thing to start.
Yeah. And it suggests that something vital, something true has been sort of edited out of the daily routine.
And I think anyone who has ever felt like they're just going through the motions, showing up for some unseen audience, they know exactly what that means. And this is the crucial reframing that the source offers. This is what makes this discussion so valuable, this hollow feeling. It's almost universally pathologized in our society.
Absolutely. It's depression, it's burnout.
It's a personal failure. You didn't achieve enough, you're not grateful enough. But the text suggests it might not be a symptom of some internal disease at all.
Oh, what is it?
It's a sign of intense, heightened awareness.
Okay, so it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Precisely. It is the recognition of the script itself. It's the moment the actor forgets their line. Not because of poor memory, but because they suddenly realize they are on a stage under hot lights.
And the words don't make sense anymore.
The words they are about to speak are meaningless. It's not a malfunction of the self, it's a successful system check on the reality around you.
That immediately changes the stakes, doesn't it?
Completely.
It moves the whole conversation from what is fundamentally wrong with me to what is fundamentally wrong with the stage I'm being asked to perform on.
And that shift, it's liberating, but it's also terrifying.
I can see that.
And that terror is the necessary fuel for the next stage of awareness.
So, okay, let's move into that. This is the first real sign of the anomaly, what we're calling the glitch in the everyday. Or, as the source so beautifully puts it, the voice in the grain.
I find that phrasing so compelling.
Me too.
Because it avoids all the grand, mystical pronouncements we usually associate with, spiritual awakenings. This isn't about hearing angels or seeing visions. It's subtle.
Right.
It's the voice that speaks in the grain of everyday things. It's in the background hum of your life.
And the source material details this as something you might detect in the specific tiny jitter of a notification sound. That slight irregularity in the digital noise we've all learned to just filter out. Or, more poetically, the specific, almost hyper-real angle of sunlight hitting the carpet at exactly 4:12 p.m.
Yes. Those very small, very specific moments when the background rhythm of reality briefly just changes pitch, or the definition of an object in front of you suddenly becomes too sharp, too real.
It's the small inconsistency that suggests a vast underlying pattern.
It's like a minor chord progression in a song you hear every day on the radio, but one day, for some reason, that minor chord just makes you stop and listen. It doesn't belong, and yet it is definitely there.
And what do we do with that?
Well, initially, the source notes this voice or this feeling. It's easily dismissed. We just rationalize it away.
I'm tired, I'm overthinking it.
I need more caffeine, or I should just put my phone down.
But the author emphasizes that the crucial point is, once you acknowledge it, this feeling gets louder.
Yes. It reaches a resonance that you can no longer ignore. It's a feedback loop. The more you notice the pattern, the more the pattern forces itself into your attention.
You start seeing the stage lights flickering in the corner of your eye.
And this intensification leads directly to the central paradox that the source articulates so well. The reality is not dissolving. The physical world is still solid.
The buildings are real, the money is real.
The weight of gravity is real, but the structure, the essential moral or meaningful underpinning of these things, that's what feels artificial.
So the life we live is performed.
It's performed, even if the bricks and mortar we live within are tangible. It's a structure built for a purpose that is, well, that is not your own.
So if the buildings are real, but the meaning is hollow, what does that imply about the act of seeing it? The material asks why recognizing the script is called the first rebellion. I mean, if the script is just the way the world operates, why is just noticing it an act of defiance?
Because the rebellion here is purely internal, but it has devastating external consequences for the system.
Oh, so?
Rebellion isn't always, a dramatic event with banners and marching. In this case, recognizing the script is the act that breaks the automatic pilot function of daily life. The script relies on seamless, predictable engagement.
We are designed to operate on default settings.
Exactly. We react predictably to stimulus. A notification arrives, we check the phone. A political headline appears, we generate one of 5 pre-programmed emotional responses.
We chase goals that were programmed into us. The career track, the mortgage, the consumer cycle.
We follow the established choreography without ever questioning the steps. So when you truly see the script, you stop being an automatic participant.
You become an observer.
A conscious observer,
Right.
a variable function in the code. And that observation fundamentally changes your relationship to the rules.
That's a powerful idea. The first step to freedom isn't escaping the cage, but realizing the cage door was never locked. You just never stopped following the loop painted on the floor of the cell.
And the act of noticing that loop breaks the enchantment.
Yeah.
And that realization that the world is simultaneously real and staged, that pushes us into this rich metaphorical territory of the visible cables, the core imagery of the film's set metaphor.
This is where this source spends a lot of time.
And it's where the reality of waking up from the trance is described.
This imagery it's visceral. It forces you to look at the world differently, especially the places where cold are permanent and polished. It's like that scene where you step off the perfectly manicured path and realize the beautiful interior of some grand municipal building is. It's just a single meticulously painted wall made of cheap plywood.
And if you dare to step around the corner,
You see the scaffolding, the sandbags, the frayed ropes, holding the whole thing upright. The source focuses on these specific details. The paint is flaking, the seams are visible,
then the cables.
and the cables, the literal infrastructure, are hanging in plain sight behind the curtain if you just shift your gaze a little.
It suggests that reality, as we experience it, is maintained, but it's maintained poorly at the edges.
Where most people aren't looking.
Exactly. When the system is running smoothly, we see the polished facade, the perfect illusion. But when the system is strained, or when our focus intensifies because of that first rebellion of awareness, we catch a glimpse of the infrastructure.
The cables, the flaking paint, the rigging.
Yes. The grand illusion requires constant, invisible energy to keep those edges out of sight. It's exhausting to maintain the perfect illusion of reality.
And what about the people in this scenario? Because the source introduces a powerful and honestly a pretty disturbing idea here. That the people we interact with, who feel perfectly real, are in many cases actors. Actors repeating lines they have never truly believed.
This is where that initial hollowness that the observer feels is then mirrored in the perceived hollowness of others. It's one thing to feel like you are performing, but it's another thing entirely to look at someone you know well, a colleague, a family member, even a partner, and realize the words they're using are just generic placeholders.
Pre-programmed dialogues.
Pre-programmed dialogues that serve a function but carry zero essential truth or conviction for the person speaking them. They are merely playing their role as scripted.
But that realization is the definition of profound cynicism, though, isn't it? If we start seeing everyone as reciting a script, doesn't it erode trust and make us incredibly paranoid and isolated?
Well, the source addresses that fear directly.
Okay.
It argues that this is not a call for paranoia. It's a call for discernment. The purpose is not to see everyone as an enemy, but to recognize that many people are simply running the default operating program without any awareness.
So they're stuck in the loop.
They're stuck in the loop, whereas you have noticed the loop, the lack of belief in their own lines. It's not malice, it's just unconsciousness.
So the realization is a form of empathy, in a way, recognizing that others are also trapped in the staging.
Exactly. And that moment of catching the script is the moment the illusion of spontaneous, genuine interaction shatters. It implies that a significant portion, maybe even a majority of human communication is just functional noise.
An input-output sequence to keep the societal engine turning.
Yeah. And the source implicitly asks us a serious, slightly chilling question, and this is for you listening. Have you ever caught your boss or your partner reciting a script?
And once you have, once you know that person is using a line designed to get a specific reaction from you, how do you ever go back to believing the interaction is authentic?
You can't.
And that's where it gets really interesting, because the source emphasizes that it's not just one big script running.
No, it's an overlapping series of specialized, highly optimized codes running simultaneously. That's what creates the multi-layered texture of daily life.
So the source material identifies 4 major interwoven types of these scripts.
Right. Scripts that dictate our behavior and perception, often in conflicting ways.
Let's dive deep into the first one, which is the cultural scripts.
Cultural scripts dictate behavior, identity, social norms. These are the deep, often unspoken rules about how to mourn, how to celebrate, how to signal belonging, and crucially, how to define ourselves socially.
A wedding, for example.
A wedding is the perfect example. It's an enormous, expensive, emotionally charged performance, almost entirely divorced from the simple legal agreement it represents. The script dictates the dress code, the music, the expected emotional tenor, the required expense.
All to signal status and adherence to the norm.
Yeah.
And the pressure to conform to those scripts it's immense. If you deviate, you're immediately seen as breaking the rules of the society.
Absolutely. They define what is acceptable ambition and what constitutes a desirable life. For example, the script for midlife success in a developed nation usually involves 3 specific props.
A certain kind of house, a certain kind of car.
And a certain kind of family structure, whether or not those props actually lead to happiness. When we talk about performing a life, a lot of that performance is just adhering strictly and visibly to the cultural script assigned to our demographic.
And failure to follow that script often results in social isolation.
Which is why the scripts are so powerful. They weaponize our need for belonging.
That leads directly to the second type, the economic scripts. If cultural scripts define how we belong, economic scripts define what we value.
And what we spend our energy chasing. Economic scripts define value, ambition, and success, primarily through this narrative of perpetual production and consumption.
And they're powerful because they masquerade as natural laws, right?
Exactly. For example, the core economic script dictates that growth must be infinite, even though we live on a finite planet. It dictates that your personal worth is directly tied to your productivity and your net worth, making people feel guilt or shame simply for resting.
I see this constantly in the career facade, the author mentions. The script requires that you define yourself by your title, and that the only acceptable direction is up, regardless of whether that path leads to fulfillment or just more work.
This script is incredibly insidious because it takes basic human needs, shelter, food, community, and turns them into metrics of competition and status. It enforces a belief system where fear of scarcity drives every single decision.
So the economic script provides the lines for that career facade.
Right. Creating dialogues about quarterly earnings, market share, productivity metrics, all recited with this ritualistic seriousness, even by people who despise the underlying philosophy.
The next type are the religious scripts, which frame meaning and morality. These must be the oldest operating systems, right? Defining the nature of the coder itself.
They are. Religious scripts, in the source's view, provide the foundational framework for our cosmic understanding. They explain the origin story of the simulation itself. And whether you personally adhere to them or not, These scripts define the moral boundaries, the acceptable use policies, and the purpose or lack of it within the simulation.
They tell you who the designer is?
Who the designer is, what the rules of the game are, and what the penalty for breaking them might be. It's the ultimate reward and punishment code.
And this framework is essential because it deals with the why. When the economic script fails to explain why we exist, the religious script provides a default answer.
A very comforting and highly detailed one, usually. It fills the vacuum left by that hollow feeling.
And that comfort is why they're so resistant to change.
They are the most stable lines of code in the entire system, defining good and evil in absolute terms, ensuring that the actors stick to their roles because the consequences for deviation are cosmic, not just social.
And finally, the most modern and maybe the most insidious, because we interact with it constantly, technological scripts. These shape what we see and, critically, what we are allowed to feel.
This is where the simulation gets its real-time operational control. Technological scripts are the algorithms that curate our reality by determining what information reaches us, who we interact with, and even the emotional register of our experience.
They thrive on predictable response.
The dopamine hit, the outrage cycle, the confirmation bias loop, yes.
So, if the economic script tells us what to desire, the technological script tells us how to feel about not having it.
Precisely. The source's mention of the jitter of a notification is a perfect example of this. That jitter is a tiny technological script running to grab your attention and define what you focus on next, often interrupting genuine thought or connection.
So they don't just manage our attention, they manage our capacity for genuine feeling.
Yes. We are only allowed to feel emotions relevant to the curated feed, either outrage towards an external target or self-congratulation for our adherence to the cultural script as reflected by likes and comments.
So it's entirely possible that the hollow feeling isn't about some lack of grand meaning in the universe, but about the constant suppression of authentic, slow-burning feeling by a highly optimized technological script.
A script designed to maximize compliance and engagement with the facade. The machine needs us compliant, consuming, and responding predictably to the notification jitter.
And seeing the technological script is maybe the hardest one to rebel against because we're so dependent on the interface.
Utterly. We need the phone to navigate, to work, to socialize. We can't just walk off the stage. We need the stage for basic function.
And, speaking of interfaces, we have to acknowledge the fundamental irony here. This deep dive, this intimate philosophical conversation about seeing the cables and recognizing the script, it's happening right now inside the digital noise. We're talking about the technological script using a technological medium.
This is the vibe check integration the sources call for. It's an essential acknowledgement of our location within the system. We're delivering an analysis of the source material through the digital architecture itself, across the wires via the algorithms.
But the message,
the intentional observation that allows you to see the script, that's the part that is real. It's the insight that cuts through the noise, even while being carried by it.
we are quite literally using the system to report on the system.
It's like watching the evening news report on the fragility of the news station's own building, using their own cameras and teleprompters.
The technology is the vehicle, but the consciousness is the message.
And that structural self-awareness transitions seamlessly into our next section, the code of the cosmos, where we treat the concept of God as the coder seriously.
As the source material instructs us to.
Which merges the ancient with the modern in a way that I think is, well, it's really satisfying.
What's fascinating here is how naturally the idea of a simulation fits into an age where algorithms dictate so much of our meaning. Historically, humanity sought explanation through divine narratives, fate, destiny, moral law.
Right.
Today, we seek answers through data, algorithms, code, and the source posits that these aren't mutually exclusive concepts, they're just different languages describing the same phenomena.
The core idea is that the cosmos can be understood as a singular system of laws and signals. Whether we call those laws physics or spiritual mandates or algorithms, they are the immutable foundational rules of the operating system.
Right, so instead of seeing divine will as some sort of a capricious, spontaneous interference, a divine hand reaching down to change the parameters, it might simply be the original fundamental operating code of the universe running to completion.
The laws that govern gravity, the speed of light, the conservation of energy.
The way matter interacts, even the statistical likelihood of certain events, that is the code written by the coder.
And the simulation hypothesis, when you view it through this lens, It doesn't necessarily negate spirituality or even traditional theology. It just reframes it for a generation that understands computational power.
So the question, if this is a simulation, who built it, leads naturally to the concept of the designer.
And the source suggests that this idea extends the horizon of how God might operate.
That perspective is genuinely unnerving, though. I mean, how do we distinguish between a genuine spiritual awakening, a profound connection to a benevolent source, and just simple confirmation bias when we're actively looking for patterns?
That's a great question.
And if God is merely the coder, does that imply the coder is indifferent or maybe even malevolent? This model seems to address theological problems like the problem of evil pretty directly.
That is precisely where the source material gets its depth. If the designer is simply the intelligence that wrote the initial code, their intent might not be benevolence in the human sense, but merely functionality. The problem of evil, why bad things happen in a universe created by a benevolent God, is easily solved if the coder is functional, not moral. Suffering and chaos are simply bugs or side effects
or essential lines of code.
Essential lines of code required for the simulation to run and produce the desired outcome, whatever that outcome might be.
So God isn't necessarily a man in the sky. God is the creator of the parameters, the initial input string. And the designer is often absent because the system is designed to run automatically.
Exactly. And it resolves some ancient conflicts beautifully. The concept of fate or destiny, often considered mystical and non-rational, can be perfectly reconciled with the concept of a code-driven system.
So if the universe is deterministic, or at least heavily guided by its foundational code,
then fate is simply the inevitable unfolding of the script written by the designer.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this perspective helps us understand rules-based existence, whether we call those rules physics, fate, or code. It gives a modern, understandable language to the search for meaning.
We're not just trying to understand the purpose of life, but the parameters of the game we are playing. And the recognition of the script, that first rebellion of awareness, is simply the system telling the player, you have attained a new level of awareness, you can now access the debug console.
But understanding the console is meaningless if you don't know the commands or if you can't trust the input.
Right.
And that uncertainty about the input leads us to the crucial part of the observation.
Yeah.
How we gather the evidence. Because we're not going to a lab for this. We're looking for evidence of the seams in our daily personal experience.
Precisely. We've established that the evidence is not based on scientific experiments or lab proof, which the scientific script would demand. It's based on highly personal, inexplicable experiences that only become clear when you are intensely listening for the code.
This is evidence gathered by intuition and pattern density.
A great way to put it.
These are the seams and glitches that the source material points to, the moments when the system hiccups and reveals its internal workings, or when the code runs a segment of itself in the wrong place.
And the source gives very specific, evocative examples that feel familiar, yet deeply unsettling.
Like a dream repeating itself precisely at noon.
And this isn't just recalling a dream, it's experiencing the atmosphere, the dialogue, the specific emotional weight of a dream in a fully conscious, external waking moment hours after it happened.
It's too exact to be a coincidence. It feels like a playback error, a temporary echo from an internal memory bank leaking into the live feed.
Or the deja vu experience that is too specific to be a simple memory lapse. We've all had that generic deja vu, that feeling of having been somewhere before.
Right.
But the source describes a moment that seems to recall a future event or a parallel timeline. You're not just remembering an event, you're remembering the next 15 seconds of the script.
Which suggests a slight misalignment in the timeline of the simulation.
As if you briefly saw a cached version of reality.
And then there's the emotional glitch, which is maybe the most difficult one to rationalize away. A sudden, overwhelming grief that arrives with no name or any discernible external cause. If the simulation requires emotions to be triggered by external stimuli within the script, a heartbreak, a loss, a trauma, what is happening when a powerful, named emotion arrives without a traceable input?
That's the part that is truly unnerving. If my emotions are being generated by the system and a powerful negative one arrives with no cause, it suggests the system is running an internal update or a diagnostic.
Causing a momentary emotional buffer overflow that leaks into my consciousness.
Exactly. That grief, which feels like it's yours, doesn't actually belong to your current situation. It belongs to the code itself.
And this sense of staging, of the unnatural precision of these events, it leads us to the most powerful phrase in the entire source material.
Coincidence piling into choreography.
That phrase just, it suggests a deliberate staging rather than a random universe. A single coincidence is random chance. Two is interesting.
But when coincidences pile up, when the same obscure name is mentioned in 3 different conversations across 3 different states, or when the exact phrase you were just thinking about appears in a book you randomly pick up, it stops feeling like chance.
It starts feeling like purposeful staging, a clear sign of the underlying code running the system.
It's synchronicity, but viewed through the lens of code. When you start seeing the same sequence of numbers, say 11.11 or 4.44 repeatedly throughout your day, or you meet the same type of person, the exact same personality profile, same profession, same life story, 3 times in 1 week, the statistical improbability becomes too dense to just dismiss.
So why does this feel like the universe speaking directly to those who are willing to listen?
Because if the system is code, then patterns are messages. The code doesn't communicate using poetry or visions, it communicates using mathematical relationships and repetitive structures.
And when the universe is trying to guide you or just signal its presence to a conscious observer, it uses repetition and synchronicity.
The person on automatic pilot simply filters that pattern out as noise, or dismisses it as trivial numerology. But the listener who has performed that first rebellion of awareness recognizes the pattern density as intentional communication.
So these glitches aren't just system bugs.
They're features.
Yeah.
Features designed to allow advanced players, the conscious observers, to interface with the deeper reality of the code. They are invitations to change the script.
Okay, so now that we've established the awareness of the hollow feeling, the recognition of the cables, the philosophical framework of the coder, and the evidence of the seams, we have to transition to the practice and the goal.
The practical, actionable application of this whole deep dive. The source material is adamant that the call to action is centered around the practice. And the goal is emphatically not to escape the game.
Not to leave reality behind or seek enlightenment in a monastery somewhere.
Exactly. The goal is to understand the rules of the system you are embedded in. Running away is still reacting to the script. It's just choosing a different predefined role, like the hermit or the dropout. Understanding the rules allows you to interact with the script differently.
And it emphasizes starting small. You don't jump straight into decoding the grand cosmic architecture.
No, you start by simply paying attention to those inconsistencies in your immediate surroundings. You start by observing the jitter and the 4:12 p.m. sunlight.
The problem for most people, I think, is that they have never dedicated focus to this observation. They let their awareness drift.
Which is why the source provides a structured methodology to combat this. We need to detail the 7-day notebook practice, the task that the source challenges the listener with. This is how you start gathering your personal evidence of the code.
Okay, so for 7 days, you, the listener, must keep a dedicated physical notebook. This is essential. It's not a general journal, and it should not be on a phone.
Because that would integrate the practice back into the technological script.
Exactly. This notebook is a logbook for the simulation's performance issues. It's an external, concrete way to honor the subjective reality of the glitch.
And each day, you're instructed to write down exactly 3 moments when the world felt oddly staged, or a feeling arrived uninvited. It's a structured approach that forces a specific kind of conscious observation.
Oddly staged is the instruction that connects back to the visible cables.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the paint looks flaking, or the dialogue felt too robotic, or coincidence piled too high to be chance. It's the visual, external evidence of the film set.
For instance, logging a moment where a colleague delivered an entire company mission statement verbatim with a perfect yet unnerving lack of spontaneity.
And the feeling arrived uninvited speaks directly to the emotional glitches. The sudden grief, the unattached anxiety, the inexplicable flash of joy that has no external trigger.
These are the internal system checks running without external input. Logging these requires deep, conscious attention. It breaks that automatic pilot loop and forces you to sit with the emotion long enough to determine its origin.
This sounds simple, but maintaining this level of focused observation for 7 days, that's an exercise in mental discipline.
It really is. It's about consciously changing your filters from default acceptance to active scrutiny.
And what's the higher purpose here? The source suggests the ultimate goal isn't just observation for its own sake. That would just lead back to that cynicism we talked about.
The ultimate goal is to understand the rules so the listener can play differently, more awake, kinder, and braver, rather than simply following the default script.
If you know the lines are pre-written, you gain the power to improvise.
You can choose not to say the predictable thing, not to react in the pre-programmed way.
If you know the economic script dictates fear and competition.
You gain the freedom to choose kindness and collaboration, knowing that the fear of scarcity is a constructed mechanism, not a fundamental reality. That bravery comes from understanding that the stakes of the script, the fear, the competition, the hollow goals, are themselves part of the illusion.
So the only thing that is truly real is your consciousness and your choice in that moment.
You become a conscious agent within the system, rather than a mindless participant. And in doing so, you slightly alter the code of the simulation itself by introducing a conscious variable element.
Wow. Okay, so we've traveled from that initial, unsettling hollow feeling to a practical methodology for recognizing the code that underlies our reality.
We started by noticing the subtle voice in the grain of the everyday.
Recognize the visible cables of the cultural, economic, religious, and technological scripts that dictate our performance.
We seriously connected the ancient idea of divine will with the modern metaphor of God as the coder, seeing the cosmos as a system of laws and signals that define fate and reality.
And we identified the crucial evidence, the seams, the deja vu that is too specific, the choreography of coincidence that tells us we are being staged.
And we ended with the challenge, the 7-day notebook practice, turning simple observation into internal rebellion and conscious action.
The sources for this deep dive ask you to consider the most fundamental question of your life, which is beautifully simple. Are you acting out a role, or are you truly being? The script is powerful, but it relies on your unconscious adherence to it.
So as you go back into your day, as you engage with the people and the structures around you, let's leave you with the final provocative thought from the source material, turning this whole conversation into an immediate personal quest.
Can you spot the glitch today?
Start observing your own scripts, listen for the voice in the grain, and see the intentional choreography of your daily life. The script is running, but you now know where the cables are hanging.